Hello and welcome to an episode of Coffee with SamPaul, where we have a chat to cool people about what they're passionate about. And today we're very excited to have on the show Gavin Mac. How you going, Gavin?
I'm really good. How are you this afternoon?
I'm very good. Thank you. A little bit chilly, but good.
Yeah,
We,
well, I mean, it's part of the season. There's no escaping it, unfortunately. Well, unless you're in northern Queensland.
yeah, well, I grew up in Darwin. I think it's pretty decent up that way too. So
Yeah, right there. Well, there you go.
yeah,
So lucky
yeah.
for those guys this time of year.
So where are we
Everywhere else
sitting?
is cold.
Sorry, mate.
Where am I sitting?
Yeah, looks like a bit of a studio type.
Yeah, this is my studio at home, my home studio. There's guitars and
Oh,
all
well.
sorts of wonderful things are littered around here, and mostly there is litter, so I won't kind of pan too much further than
No,
that.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, no worries at all. So we'll just jump straight into it. I thought I'd start with some of your influences. Like so you do like kind of country music.
Yeah, look, my influences are pretty diverse. I've been on the planet a little while, so I've had the opportunity to consume a lot of music, and I would say I have a pretty even spread of influences across the years, from soul and blues to rock and roll, and country, and of course country music, and I wrap them, I guess, as a product of that kind of blended experience,
Yep.
into what you hear on Sideswiped and other singles, which
Yeah.
by definition is old country.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. It can get difficult though. I think as one musician to another, when you do have that broad spectrum of influences, um, even though there might be that one sort of defining theme in the style, sometimes it can get a bit broad. I know, like for example, there's a song out at the moment, or was recently, Marshmello and Kane Brown. Kane Brown from the country, Marshmello kind
Mm,
of from the more electronica,
mm.
and it seemed like the country people didn't like that it wasn't very country, and the electronic people didn't like So sometimes it can be get pretty tricky, I think.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, there's always going to be people who are traditionalists,
Yeah,
and people who are eager for kind of progression, or and that's not to say there's anything wrong with traditional music, and particularly in country and genres like soul as well, where
yeah,
the really traditional strains are powerful, and
yeah,
they shouldn't be screwed with. But there is, subgenres and extensions and progression that if you that span electronica through to country, and I'm thinking of
yeah,
Avicii, or comes to mind,
yeah,
or Morgan Wallen, where there's a lot of just debate over certain tracks of his and whether they're country at all, because it crosses hip
yeah,
hop.
yeah.
So look, I think that those. I like to think that those audiences that are open-minded actually really enjoy the variety,
Yeah.
that of stylistic influence that comes through
Yeah,
in the genre that they represent.
100%, 100%. So you did mention you touched on just then the single Sideswipe. That's the current single, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Um,
it is.
so I believe you wrote that when you were a teen. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did write it when I was a teen. It was a really early song that I wrote, actually. When I would say kind of really just figured out how to write music, and prior to that, it was a lot of scratchings. And I wrote the chorus and the first verse, and in fact, I wrote the song, and it had some potential that never was really that was never realised. And during COVID, in the kind of shifting or reassessment of priorities and so forth, I dug some of the my old music out, dusted it off, and looked at it through a more mature and I guess a much more experienced lens.
Yeah,
What I liked, what I didn't like, whether it was worth revisiting, and that one certainly was for me.
yeah,
And so what I did was I took I guess the kernel of the idea and the verse about the day from hell,
yeah,
and I just turned it up and kept turning it up, so that day from hell went as sideways as it does on the recording.
Yeah, yeah. That was going to be something I was going to ask. Did you adjust the lyrics, I suppose, somewhat with the mature lens? But it sounds like that's pretty much what you've done.
Yeah, I think that young folks, and I was watching the Eras tour on TV last night again for the 100th time with my daughters, and like even she says, some of these songs are from my experience, personal experiences, and my feelings, and some of them are stories
Yeah,
that have just sprung from my mind, and as a particularly young person, you have a lot of stories that spring that are inspired either through things you watch or read or just
yeah,
ideas that you have, but they're not necessarily from lived experience. And when you're able to apply lived experience to songwriting, it adds a dimension certainly that song didn't
yeah,
have, and a couple of others that I went back and re-looked at and thought, what was I talking about there? That makes no sense at all. I think this is what I was trying to say.
yeah,
So yeah, it was a really interesting exercise, and I think that hopefully one that is enjoyable to listen to and experience.
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, certainly it's hard to write when you're a youngster without that lived experience, in a sense, like from your own point of view, because you haven't lived yet. Um, so I've been informed you've been working with producer Matt Fell, who I did a bit of research, and I believe he was worked with Troy Cassadaly and the Whitlams, just to name a few. What was it like to work with someone of that caliber?
Yeah, so Matt's brilliant in a word, uh, and at the top of his game, I think. Really, he's produced a lot of great records, and particularly in country. He's worked with Fanny Lumpstein last year. Got won the ARIA for Best Country Album of the Year. He's won other ARIAs and many golden guitars, many golden guitars. His house is like littered with them, and he's just a very multi-talented gentleman in terms of his producing capabilities, but also his playing capabilities. And I think at the moment he's touring with the Whitlams, produced the Whitlams album,
Mhm.
and touring with them, playing bass, I imagine for fun, and
Oh,
hanging out
wow.
with his friends. But yeah, he was an incredible guy to work with, as was Ben Butler, who's an Australian expat, normally based in New York, who played guitar on a lot of the album, who's been a session musician for a long time in the US, and plays tours with Sting, played on Springsteen's Western Stars,
Yep.
which you see him in the background there with Springsteen playing along when Springsteen recorded that album and live show that was on Netflix, In a Big Barn. So he was an incredible guy to play with as well. Had just a huge depth of talent, and a really sophisticated sound.
Yeah, right. That's amazing. And so I believe you're signed to Sony.
I was as a kid.
Oh, okay. Not
Yes.
anymore.
No, no, not at all. Not at all anymore. So I got an opportunity as through a talent show, not dissimilar to the ones that you were. Sorry, I'm just plugging myself in here. Just noticed that the red light was on. That's not a good thing. So
Okay.
the through a talent show on at the time called Star Search,
Oh yeah, I remember
and
Star Search.
not dissimilar. Yeah, not dissimilar to the Voices and those type of shows.
Yeah.
The record industry folks. There was a prize. I didn't win the prize, but I got a little bit of interest from from Sony at the time, Dennis Hanlon and co, who offered me a deal, which I was obviously happy to accept. But
Yeah.
school life got in the way, and that disappeared,
Yeah.
and so not a lot came from it. But yeah, it was just part of the journey, and kind of, I guess, what provided me a lot of the fuel around confidence in what I was doing, and I guess commitment to it.
Yeah. Right. Very cool. Very cool. Even though it didn't kind of pan out, obviously, I guess the way you'd hope. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Look,
it
I
could have
think
been
you can. Yeah, you
a,
can go. that didn't work out. Well, I'm going to pack up and do something else, or you can, or it's the impetus to kind of that, as it was for me, which is gave me made me realize that it's was more than just a hobby. It was something that I was actually pretty good
Yeah.
at, and it was something that I became very committed to.
Yeah, right. Oh, so something good came out of it, didn't it? As they say, every
Absolutely.
experience, is a lesson in some way, shape, or form. So, it's good that it was able to show you that it was more than just a hobby and that you actually had something sort of worth pursuing.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so, coming back to what we were talking about before with the influences, I was curious to kind of ask you, because like I grew up at a time when when you'd ask people what kind of music they like, a lot of the time the people that I was around, they would be like, oh, I like all kinds of music except country. I feel like with people like yourself coming out with where you've got these vast array of influences that are perhaps not what back then, was traditional, the more, traditional country, it's making it a bit more accessible to a wider audience. Would you agree with that? And how have you found that for yourself?
I think it can be a double-edged sword to stray from genre accepted genre norms or conventions.
Hmm.
I think that it helps to broaden the prospects of the genre if the genre is open to that. If the audiences are open to that.
Hmm.
Um, uh, or it can challenge people who have a particular view of a genre and what is and what isn't, um, um, you know, a fit for it.
Yeah.
And I guess, getting, more deep into country music in, I guess the last 5 to 10 years, but prior spending a lot of time growing up listening to blues and soul
Mm.
and rock and roll and particularly rock and roll there's far more variations of the rock and roll genre than there are of country music genre,
Yeah.
although they're both derived from blues music,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of funny that that there's constraint, far greater constraint around country music when it's essentially derived from the same thing as rock and roll.
Yeah.
Um, but so I respect that, but I just think that there's kind of room for both.
Yeah. 100%. I would agree with you there. As I said, someone growing up there where country for a lot of people kind of in my circles at least was definitely not frowned upon, but wasn't the favorite music of choice. But I find myself now even I've always been of the attitude that in every kind of genre of music, if you dig hard enough, you're going to find at least a few songs that you do like, even if you think you don't like that particular genre. I get very upset when someone says I don't like this genre because I think, well, have you listened to every song in that genre? Because if not, then you kind of jumping the gun a bit. But yeah, no, I like that. I like that. I'm going to leave you with one last quick question. We'll make it a bit
Yes.
more of I guess a bit more fun.
Yeah, go.
I'm just curious to know. Obviously, you've worked with some great producers and so forth, but if you had a choice to work with whether a collaborating artist or another producer in anyone in the whole entire world, is there someone that you have in mind that you'd pick? And if so, sort of why would you choose them?
I feel like saying Fred again, but just because as a producer, he's a force, um, and he hasn't done anything that specifically crosses the country line yet. But it'll be really interesting to see when he does, and
Yeah.
undoubtedly. But no, I think like if I was going to collaborate with anybody, getting the opportunity to write a song with Chris Stapleton would probably be
Yeah. Right.
the the thing that I'd die happily with as something I've done, and because I think that there's just a sincerity and a melodic sensibility and lyrical kind of capability that's really natural and beautiful,
Yeah.
and that's the type of thing that I kind of emulate or aspire to. One of those.
Yeah. That's a good answer. I have to say, when you said Fred again, my ears pricked up as well because I do think something really good could come out of that.
Yeah.
I'm not super familiar with Fred again, but what I have heard has been like, whoa, that's like really cool, you know. And I just kind of imagine that melding with something that you do and creating something really unique. So
Well, we spoke about Avicii at the start of the conversation, and I mean,
yeah,
he's with Hey Brother, as a melding of electronica and country music was extraordinary. And let's do more of that.
yeah,
Let's push boundaries that draw together like a really traditional genre, or traditional songs within the genre, like that song is, and but explode them for mainstream audiences and make them accessible and danceable and all those wonderful things too. So I mean, after all, it's entertainment. So
yeah,
as entertaining as it can be, I think is
yeah.
a worthwhile.
And I think that's ultimately what we're here for, isn't it? To
Yeah,
entertain. Yeah,
to
yeah.
be entertained. Yeah, to be moved or to move.
That's it. That's it. Thank you so much, Gavin, for taking the time to have a chat on Coffee with SamPaul. We wish you all the best with your future music endeavors and with Sideswiped. And yeah, it's been a really great opportunity to have a chat with you, mate.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sam. Really appreciate your time
All right,
and
man.
your support as well.
No problem at all. Thank you. All
All
right.
right, take care.
Yeah, you too.
See you, mate.